And I'd be trying to get him to do this and this and this and this and all these different things at the same time. And it didn't occur to me that I was just overwhelming people.
This is the Begin Within podcast, where we believe real, lasting health and fitness requires you to start inside before you work out. I'm your host, Nate Slegger, and I'm here to show you behind the scenes of fitness. You already know exercise is good for you, but what about all the other things in life that affect your fitness? If you're looking for extra motivation to get started or to make sure you keep going, this is the place for you.
Produced by BeginWithin.fit.
Could you do me a favor? If you've listened to this show before, or if you're here for the very first time, please follow the show in your podcast player so that you can make sure that you get updates each and every time that I post a new episode. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, I'm going to ask an extra favor of you. Please go to the show in your podcast player, scroll down through the episodes to the place where you can rate and review this show. I would love it if you give me 5 stars, but do what you feel is right, and then a review on what you think about this show and how it has supported you in your journey to becoming the best possible version of yourself. Thank you. Now, on with the interview for today. My guest is Tony Winyard. He is a habitologist. So I love that, habitologist. I'd love to be a habitologist someday. And I think honestly, all of the best personal trainers, dietitians, nutritionists, nutrition coaches, I think if you boil it all down, we all at least should be, a little bit of a habitologist. Because that's what it's all about, right? Changing our behavior through habits. So Tony today is going to help us to do just that. He is a certified Tiny Habits coach. If you listen to previous episodes, we have referenced that book before. We've had guests that have talked about it, and that concept of starting small is always there. So he's going to talk about how we can create new habits. He's a coach, he's a trainer, he's a speaker, and he really helps his clients to improve their quality of life and health by focusing on habits. He is also the host of the Habits and Health podcast. So feel free to check that out. Here are a couple things that I would love for you to listen for, just to prepare your mind before we dive into the interview. 3, we'll call them themes, but 3 specific things that we are going to cover. First of all, we talk about sleep at the outset, and that's something that Tony is super passionate about. So you're going to find some habit-related sleep issues kind of peppered throughout. But when we dive into the interview, that's what we're talking about, is the importance of sleep as really a foundation habit that affects everything else. And that makes sense, right? So listen for that. Think about your own sleep habits as we talk about that. We're also going to talk about, like I mentioned, building tiny habits, the importance of starting small, and then specifically having a Tiny Habits coach on is awesome because he's going to share with you some actual exercises that BJ Fogg, the author of the book Tiny Habits, teaches in that, I call it a habit manual, Tony's going to share some of those strategies, some of those exercises with you and me so that we can use them as we develop our own tiny habits. One of the coolest things that I want you to listen for is the role of identity in changing our behavior, in changing our habits. And it helps us to understand, when we consider the role of identity, it helps us to understand why tiny, small steps to develop new habits is so very important. Here's my interview with Tony Winyard.
I mean, I guess I've been lucky because I've always slept well. I've never had problems with sleep. But then in the last couple of years, I've been doing more and more studying around sleep and the benefits and how it helps us in so many different ways. And then I thought, and I think one of the things that I wasn't doing that probably wasn't helping my sleep quality, I was always getting good quantity, but I was quite erratic with when I went to bed and when I woke up. So sometimes I'd be going to bed at 11, other times it might be 3 a.m. And, you know, and so the more I studied sleep, the more I learned about sleep, the more I learned about the benefits of trying to have a regular sleep time that you go to sleep and that you wake up. So then I decided, okay, now I realize that there's so many benefits of good sleep. I'm going to make sleep the number one priority. And so I made that decision. It was probably around this time last year. And I've stayed by that since then. And my sleep was already good. And now it's just even gone to another level. I just get such good sleep. You know.
Great. When you talk about some of the benefits, like what are some of the things that you've achieved or some of the benefits that you've realized just from making those little changes to the schedule for sleep?
I mean, I didn't used to wake up a lot during the middle of the night, but I would sometimes. It's very rare that happens now. I always wake up feeling refreshed and feeling like, you know, full of energy and ready to go. And first thing I do usually is I go out and I have a walk or a run or something along those lines. And I just feel I'm just always in a good mood. You know, it's so rare that, well, actually rare is not the right word. I was going to say that it's rare that I feel down, but I never feel down. And I don't mean that like, oh, look at me. I just feel, yeah, I'm always just have kind of zest and have energy. You know.
Awesome. Yeah. It's that. So what I'm hearing is sleep kind of becomes like the basis of like this upward kind of trend in life, where if you've got more energy and more positivity, I mean, I can imagine when you face a challenge then in life, you're coming at it from a whole different place, you know, it's like psychologically and even physically, right, to deal with those kinds of challenges. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I'm curious, and I know I mentioned like I want to dig into this a little bit. I know you're a habit expert, habitologist. Am I saying that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Tell me a little bit about that. Like what are you helping people to achieve from your work in coaching on habits?
So what happened really was over the last sort of few years, I've got deeper and deeper into many aspects of health, and I became a nutrition coach and a breath work coach. And as you know, as we've already talked about sleep, and I had really good knowledge around these different areas, and I was trying to help people implement it into their lives to help them improve their sleep or their nutrition or whatever it may have been. But there just felt like there was something missing, and it wasn't easy to transfer the knowledge to people. And the missing link was, I read Tiny Habits again last year. I'd already read it before, and I'd read like Atomic Habits and Power of Habit and many of those other habit books. But for some reason, when I read it last year for this, I think it must have been the second or third time, it really struck a chord with me much more than it ever had previously. There was something that I was more receptive to when I was reading it last year. And then I thought, let me explore more about this, because I think this could really help me to help my clients to make habits of sleep and nutrition and so on. So I investigated more. I found out there was a course to become a Tiny Habits coach, and I took the course, became an instructor or became a tiny habits coach. And I learned so much on the course. I met BJ Fogg, the author of the book, quite a few times, and he's such a nice guy. And yeah, and it's just, so I learned a lot more about behavior science, how it works, how we can the best way to go about creating a habit and so on. Yeah. And that was the missing link. That was the key, because now I'm able to help people so much easier to implement the information or recommendations I give them around sleep and breathing and so on.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I can relate to that. I think a lot of us who, want to help people, whatever realm we're in, I have the fitness trainer background, but it's like, I know all this stuff. I'm going to tell you what you need to do and you're going to do it. And it's like going to change everything for you. And then we tell someone, here's what you need to do. And then they struggle with implementing it. Right. So I think that is a huge, huge piece of it. Could you tell us a little bit about the philosophy of tiny habits, and what is so, unique about the approach?
Well, one of the main things is in the name, tiny. It was quite when I realized where I was going wrong with what I'd been doing before, because often it's something that you touched upon just now. I'd be giving people way too much information, and I'd be trying to get them to do this and this and this and this and all these different things at the same time. And it didn't occur to me that I was just overwhelming people. The whole thing about tiny habits is, for example, many people want to learn meditation, or they want to get fitter, or whatever it is that, whatever new behavior they want to do. And typically we're way too ambitious about what we think we can achieve. And so someone who wants to learn meditation, they decide, right, I'm going to meditate an hour every day, which is, if you're going to run a marathon, you wouldn't start running 20 miles every day. You'd start, well, if you're given good advice, you start maybe running a few hundred meters every day or something along those lines. So it is about the way to make a habit stick is to make it tiny. So it's almost impossible to fail. So rather than aiming for 30 minutes of meditation, aim for 10 seconds. That's almost impossible to not achieve, isn't it? And if you can just do 10 seconds every day for, say, 2 weeks, and you don't have to limit it to 10 seconds, but you just want to at least do 10 seconds. And you start to do 10 seconds, and likely, you're going to do more than that. You're going to do maybe a minute or 5 minutes or whatever. Right. But anything you do more than 10 seconds is a bonus. But the main thing is, you feel successful after 2-3 weeks that you've done it every day. You've developed a new habit and you've changed your identity, because whereas before you were kind of maybe thinking about yourself, I just can't meditate. I'm just not that type of person. Now you feel, I'm a meditator. I meditate every day. And that's so important, that identity piece.
Interesting. Okay. What I'm curious, as you were, comparing it to meditation, I was thinking back to even the changes that you made with sleep. And now I'm thinking like, okay, you change your sleep schedule. That sounds easy, but it's really not when you have a whole, things going on in life and a way of doing things. And were there some tiny habits even around sleep that you could share, or things that you've, used to help other people with that area of life?
So what I did for myself, I started thinking about, okay, what is it typically that I'm doing at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning? How important is that really to my life? And there was no importance at all, because usually it was messing around on Facebook, where there was no importance whatsoever. That didn't do anything for me in terms of getting anywhere or being more content with life or whatever. So I realized that if I could go to bed on a more consistent time and be waking up more consistently at the same time, generally that would mean I'd be waking up earlier, and then I could get more done earlier in the day. And then at nighttime, actually for me, I'm quite disciplined when it comes to anything around health. I'm pretty disciplined. So it wasn't too much of a struggle for me to make the change. When it comes to things around business, I'm nowhere near as disciplined, but anything around health, I just have amazing discipline. And I managed to make that transition relatively easy.
Got it. Okay. And I'd have to imagine we talk about tiny habits, and like I mentioned to you, like we've read the book. I think we've had a couple of guests that have mentioned the book on this show before. When we look at bigger habits, we're kind of all looking at the same ones, right? Like I got to eat vegetables. I got to work out regularly. I want to get good sleep. But as we start getting smaller, it becomes more individualized, right? Like the things that will get me to eventually work out regularly are probably different than the things that would get, those tiny habits that would get someone else to that end result. So how do you help somebody pick what their tiny habit should be? Is that, can I ask that question? Is there an answer to that question?
There is. And one of the things it's almost impossible to help someone initiate a behavior that they don't want to do. So sometimes people tell themselves, I should be doing this and I should be, but they feel they should be, but they don't really want to be. And if they don't really want to be, it's never going to happen realistically. So unless someone wants to do something, it's going to be very hard for them to make that a new behavior. So that's one of the first things.
Yeah.
But then secondly, it could be that there is a bit of ambivalence. Maybe they do feel they can see the benefits of doing this new behavior, but they're not quite sure about how to go about it. So one of the ways, there's a model that BJ Fogg came up with called a swarm of bees. And it stands for swarm of behaviors. The B is for behaviors, but he uses this little sort of model with all these like bumblebees kind of flying around. And what he suggests that people do is, so you've got this new behavior. So you mentioned about, I think what was it, exercise is one of them. You want to do more exercise or whatever. So you write the behavior in the middle of a piece of paper. Right, I want to exercise more regularly. Maybe I want to do 10 minutes every day, for example. So then around the outside of the paper, you put all the different ways that you might achieve that. So you might put, right, every time I go to toilet, I'm going to do a press up after I go to toilet.
Okay.
Every time I have a cup of tea, I'm going to do, some kind of stretch. Every time so you're just thinking about all the different ways. You're just writing down all the possible things that you might do. Maybe I go running for 5 minutes in the afternoon, or you just think about all the possible things there are that might help you get this new behavior into to be automated into a habit. And once you've written down, and some of them, try not to edit yourself, try not to be too sensible about it, put some crazy things down, just put down as many things as possible. And once you've got them down, then you start looking at all of them and seeing, and then being more realistic about what's going to work. And also then how would it work? So maybe you think, I'm going to go for the run 5 minutes every day, but where could I fit that into my schedule? And then you start looking at the reality and how that might work. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So kind of just like a brainstorming session with that. Initially, almost it's disorganized, right? Just like throw it on the paper. Like, let's get a bunch of stuff, ideas going. Nothing's too crazy here. And then sit down and take a look and figure out what's more realistic. Okay. Nice. I want to jump back to something that you said about, do you really want to do this behavior?
Yeah.
Cause I think we have a lot of, like, we talk about what we should be doing all the time. Right. So how do you know? How would you maybe help somebody who's like, well, I'm here, I want to talk to you because I need to work out. Like, what would be a sign maybe that I'm not, that's not really a behavior that I want to do, and maybe not even worth looking at right now?
A couple of ways, really. It could be in the language it's initially used in that first discussion. If someone keeps saying that I should be doing this new behavior that they've suggested they want to do, if they've mentioned should a couple of times, then I might question them, like, is this something that you want to do, or something you think that other people tell you should be doing? And then they may just say, I don't really want to do it, but I just think, and then you ask them to really think about it. Look, do you feel you can do this? Because if you don't feel you can do it, then we're just wasting each other's time. You know? Or it might be that the language they use initially, they don't mention should, but when they start trying to do it, every day they coming up with a different excuse for why it never happened. And at that point, then you might ask them, well, do you really want to do this? Or is this something that other people are pressuring you to do, or other you feel that you should do because of expectations or so on? Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, no, that is really interesting to me. And I wonder, I could see having somebody listen to the language that you're using would be helpful. I'm curious about if someone is trying to kind of do this initially by themselves, like, and maybe it's just looking at what's your motivation here? Is it because someone told you should, that you're going to try this? I want to just, as we kind of wrap up, I want to talk about Tiny a little bit, because I feel like the thought, everyone wants quick results, right? They want, like, especially when it comes to working with someone like you or me or people on our teams, like, I'm here for results. So when you talk with them about, like, hey, we're going to make this super tiny. So tiny, it's ridiculous. It's so easy. And even people I've worked with and suggested, I think a lot of times that we hear back, like, how's that going to really get me where I want to go? Like, I want to go faster than that. Like, give me the real answer. What would you say to someone who's like, it's too slow, I want quicker results?
Well, it depending on what it is they're asking. If it's around weight loss, then I might say, well, when you've tried to do it fast before, what's been the typical result? Well, how has that gone for you? And they normally say, oh, well, yeah, maybe I did lose a few pounds early on and then it all came back on. And so you can say, well, so you've tried this many times before, and all right, maybe you've lost it in the short term, but in the long term, it's always come back. So let's try a different approach, because there's the supposed saying by Einstein, which Einstein never actually said, but people always say that Einstein said, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same results. He never actually said that, but it's a good quote anyway. But rather than doing the same thing all the time and then expecting to somehow get a different result, we all know that's not being realistic. So let's look at doing something different. If it is something that you've tried before, if it's not something you've tried before and you just feel that suddenly you want to put on, you want to put on a load more muscle or whatever the new behavior or the new result, the outcome that you want, most things it's better to do it, to take time to do it rather than trying to rush it. And with the tiny behavior, part of the tiny, there's two aspects of the tiny behavior in the tiny habits. It's not just about making it so small that you can't fail. So I gave the example of 10 seconds of meditation, but it's also about not taking on too many at the same time. So because studies have shown that if you take on one new behavior, so maybe it is the meditation or the running or whatever it might be, and you just decide, like, this is going to be the new habit I'm going to work on for the next 2-3 weeks. If you just work on that one, you've got something like an 80% chance of success when people just work on one.
Okay. When
people work on two, that falls down to, I think it's something like 56 or something. I forget the exact figures. Okay. When you try and do three, that falls down to something like 20 something. And then, the lower it goes, the more that you're trying to take on. So, and often people do try and do 3 or 4 or 5 at the same time because they feel they've got lots of motivation at the start. The problem is motivation doesn't really last for most people. It's hard to be motivated every day. So it's better to be tiny, not just in how much you're doing of the new behavior, but not trying to do too many either.
Okay. Yeah. As you were explaining that, I am thinking absolutely, even someone comes to us and is like, hey, I want to lose weight. I want to get healthy. I want to get fit. And boom. I'm going to start working out regularly. Most days a week. I'm going to start eating better all the time. I'm going to start drinking lots of water every day. It's this whole life shift, right? How?
And one of the
Oh,
things that happens from that is
yeah.
that one thing I haven't mentioned yet, it's really important in all of this habits, is the way to really wire a habit in so that it is automated and we do it daily without thinking and it becomes subconscious, is we need to feel successful. We need to really celebrate when each day that we do that habit, we need to celebrate it. Now I'm British. We're notoriously kind of like, we don't show our emotions, I mean, Americans do it much better than we do, but it's really important to try to celebrate in some way, even if it's internally and you're just saying in your head, great job.
Yeah.
You might be, if you're much more an effusive type person, you might go around, yeah, or whatever, or you might, do the kind of like arm in the air, like you've just scored a winning touchdown or whatever it might be. But it's important, that celebration, because that wires it into your head and you're showing yourself, yeah, I can do this. I am, and it's part of that identity change. And there's a reason I started to mention that, because you just said about the, I forget,
taking on a bunch of things all at once. And yeah, because
if you try and take on too many things, it's hard to, because then you feel like a failure. Because if you try and take on 4, 5, 6 different things and you start losing motivation and you're not able to do all of them, then you feel like you failed. And then when we feel like we failed, it's very difficult to keep doing it.
Interesting. So yeah, if I try to do all these things and one of them's not working, or all of them I'm struggling with, I'm just not an exerciser. I'm just not ever going to make this work. Interesting.
You reinforce that negative identity.
Right. Yeah. Success, feeling success, experiencing success is a key part of the process.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, cool, man. I want to have you on here again, if that's okay. I love talking about this. Like I said, I love the book. I have not had an opportunity to talk with someone who's taken the course and is a habit expert helping others. So, man, I'm so happy that you came on the show. Before we just say goodbye, what if someone was listening now and they're like, okay, I've taken this all on and I want to, I'm here because I want to get fit. I want to lose body fat. I want to exercise regularly. I want to eat better, do all the stuff. But now they're listening to us and they're like, uh-oh, maybe I'm going in too heavy here. What would be an initial step from here that you would recommend for them?
Well, there's 2 things that they could do, which are completely free. And they would get some help from a Tiny Habits coach. So they could go to my website, tonywinyard.com/habits. And I've got they can just sign up for a free 5-day program in which I will kind of help them through whichever new behavior they want to implement, whether that be around sleep or nutrition or exercise. Or they could go to the Tiny Habits site, which is tinyhabits.com, and they could sign up for the same program on there. And on there, you can then specify what area of life that you want to do a new behavior in. Is it around health and wellness? Is it around finances? Is it around, there's many different areas that you can pick a Tiny Habits coach. And for 5 days so if you signed up today, for example, you'd be put on the program, which will start next Monday. There's a new program starts every Monday. It's always free, never any charge for it. And we just it's all done via email. And each day, so for example, say you said, well, I'm going to start meditating. So I then get an email from you asking, the email would be sent to you saying, did you meditate today? Reply to me with a Y for yes or an N for no. And then if the reply comes back no, then there'll be some correspondence giving you some tips about maybe some things that you could try to tweak it to make it work, or, and that just carries on for the 5 days.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So tonywinyard.com/habits.
/habit.
Okay. I'll link that for sure in our show notes. So our listeners can give it a try. That's awesome. Yeah. Tony Winyard, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being on the show.
No problem at all, Nate. It was a pleasure.
If you'd like to connect with Tony, follow his work, and get support from him, go to TonyWinyard.com and click on the Take the Quiz button. I will link directly to that in the show notes as well, but that will get you into the process that Tony mentioned in the interview. Before I wrap up with you for today, I just want to revisit that single idea of identity. How important it is. And that was a kind of a light bulb moment for me as I was doing this interview with Tony. Was tiny habits. We've talked about motivation on the podcast before. We've talked about how tiny steps help to counteract the fact that motivation doesn't last. It's just a feeling that disappears after a while, and when it's gone, then what do? Well, the answer that we found is you make the step so easy that no matter what, you have the motivation to do it. Tony talked about that today. But that piece about identity is so important. When it comes to making changes, it's important for us to realize that we're actually becoming a better version of ourselves, which actually is a different person, right? We have a different identity. I didn't exercise before, but now I'm an exerciser. I didn't care about what I ate before, but now I'm a healthy eater. Tiny habits helps us to address that issue of identity very quickly. We might think, well, it's going to take me a long time before I'm actually a healthy eater. It's going to take me a long time before I'm an exerciser. But when we break it down into very small steps that we can accomplish easily day after day after day, we become a healthier person just by taking a small step consistently. And so I want to invite you, just in closing, to think about yourself. Think about what might be one of the smallest, easiest steps that you can take consistently to start building the identity of being a healthy person, a healthier person, a healthy eater, an exerciser, whatever it may be, whatever aspect of identity that you would like to adjust. I want to invite you to think about what that small step might be and how you can commit to taking it. If you need some help thinking through that, get in touch with Tony or get in touch with our team. You can email me as well, nate@beginwithin.fit, or follow the directions that you hear at the close of each and every episode here on the Begin Within podcast to join the current challenge that we're running. Thank you once again so much for being here with me. I appreciate you. I'm so happy that I have the privilege to be able to support you in your journey to being a healthier version of you. I'll talk to you next week. If you are tired of feeling frustrated and disappointed with fitness and you're ready to get on the path to being the healthy person you want to be, just go to beginwithin.fit and click the Join Our Challenge button. We can't wait to support you in your fitness journey and help you to get the results you deserve.